Welcome to Season 8, Episode 49 of the Be Conscious podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Brian Proctor, who joins us from Washington State. Brian is the son of the late Bob Proctor and is here to share with us handed-down wisdom that has the power to help each of us live happier and more fulfilling lives. Here we go.
Welcome to the Be Conscious podcast, the show that brings you enlightened perspectives on the frequency of money, life's many challenges, and those heavy feelings that may be holding you back from living your best life. And now your host, Dr. Susan Nicholas.
Brian Proctor was born in 1961 in Toronto, Ontario, the same year his legendary father, Bob Proctor, was given the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which began his father's 60-year journey into personal development. For nearly 30 years, Brian worked alongside his father as he taught from some of the world's largest stages. Brian attributes his success to the lessons he has learned from his father in creating lasting relationships. Brian, welcome to the Be Conscious podcast.
Thank you very much, Susan. It is great to be here.
Brian, I think much of the world is familiar with your father's work, but probably fewer of us know about you and your journey as an individual person, but as also the son of Bob Proctor. I know myself and many would be so, I would say, I don't want to use the word envious or jealous, to have like a conscious parent, to have someone that was spiritually evolved. Because, I think you can probably understand that most of us didn't have that, and that your father's was a singular, unique individual. So I would love to start out learning about you. You as a younger person, what was your life like growing up? And can you share some of the early wisdoms that you learned as the son of Bob Proctor?
Yeah, well, thanks, Susan. I do realize how lucky I am. I've often said I feel like I lived a charmed life, because of having Bob Proctor as a father. And, I do recognize that. That being said, to me, he was just dad. He was my father. But, in untangling the whole past, I realized how fortunate I was. And boy, if you want me to share a story of probably one of my earliest memories, it would be when I was a young boy. I can often remember Dad was on the road a lot, but if he was home, he was the one that would tuck me into bed at night. And this memory just warms my heart. It's probably one of the earliest things I can really, really think back to. He would come and he would sit on the edge of the bed as I was laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep. And he would put his hand on my chest. He always said, you need to be connected, to physically touching each other. And he would start to share all the good things that happened to me that day, all the things I did. He would really empower me in anything good that I did that day. And if I had a bad experience or something didn't work right, he would actually have me start to look at the positive to it. What was good from whatever situation had occurred, and really, really got me looking at looking at life through rose-colored glasses, always looking for the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Then probably the best part of it is he would then, in a very calm voice, he would say, "Brian, you are capable of being, doing, or having anything you want in this life." And he says, "You're going to have a great sleep tonight. When you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a big smile on your face and you're going to have a wonderful day." And that, you know what, Susan, that is my earliest memory of Bob Proctor as a father.
That's wonderful. I You know, one of the things that I've learned in my conscious works and, having the capacity to see and move energy is that our children come in, no, I'll put it this way, no one comes to earth for free. We all have our stuff. And I think one of the things that doesn't necessarily happen, I think your situation is quite unique, is that we don't have parents that are conscious or aware enough to help us as children, like
Hmm.
to what I consider like, oh, change perspectives or see things differently or empower our thinking, bring attention to our language, how powerful we are as beings, and certainly to transform energies, the soul of us, the essence of our being, which I believe this is a very long, infinite ancestral thread that we carry within us. And in many ways, I say when we are born, we come into baby bodies, but our souls, they are ancient. And there's wisdom in there, but there can also be trauma and other things that we bring into our embodiments. And so I think having lessons very early on and early memories like that likely set you up for a different childhood and perhaps teenage years, kind of when many of us struggle so much. Is that a true statement, or were there things that you still had to figure out on your own?
Well, I would say that's definitely a true statement. I certainly had to figure things out on my own as well. I mean, we all go through, through different situations, as you say, through our teenage years. But I do feel that I was better equipped to deal with things that came along because of the way I was brought up. Um, I look back on that and I think because of what dad did for me, I did that for my children.
Mhm.
I did exactly the same thing. And I always look at my kids when they were going through teenage years. They were always very well adjusted, just great kids. I never had any issue with them. I now have grandchildren, and I see my daughter doing that with her kids. So it's a wonderful generational change that
Mhm.
really was created because of what Dad did with me when I was young. And like you say, our souls are I really like the way you worded that. We're old souls that are just coming into a new body. And
Mhm.
I can remember one day, Dad was doing a seminar. I think we were in Los Angeles at the time, and he made a comment from the stage. He says, "As children, or he says, our souls pick who our parents are going to be."
Mhm.
And I can remember sitting in that chair, and you just brought this memory to me. I remember sitting in my seat listening to him thinking, boy, I really chose right. you know?
I'll share with you, Brian. I've heard that, in the spiritual talk and the kind of circles I hang with too, or I'm a part of. And my question when I heard that was, why would I have chosen my parents? I had the equal and opposite reaction that you did. I
well,
literally was confused. I was like, why would I have done that?
that's funny. Well, I guess you had a different journey than I had, so we're all here to learn different things, I guess. And yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I have found in my journey into consciousness, into self awareness, is that these messages don't resonate with everyone.
Hmm.
Not everyone will, I would say, awaken or ascend in this lifetime. Is the way I like to think about it. So, what about your siblings and your mom? Was everybody on board with this? Or were some skeptics or some like, almost like they're going to learn their lessons the hard way kind of thing? Was there any resistance to this personal development in your immediate family?
The honest answer, Susan, is probably yes. We all resonated with it in different ways.
Mhm.
My parents, they divorced when I was 14 years old. And I get it. They were both on different paths.
Mm-hmm.
They both got remarried and were then married for 40 some years
Mm-hmm.
to their respective partners. So they each found their way. Um, I have a brother and a sister, and we've certainly all taken the material and used it differently. I think we've all used it for good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, we've all picked it differently. I can remember a comment my brother made to me after he read the book that I wrote, and he says, he was almost a little bit envious. He says, "I wish I had that relationship with Dad."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he had a great relationship with Dad, but it was a different relationship
Mm-hmm.
because I think we're all different, and we all handle and treat this material in a different way. I chose to, I think, accept it just for what it was. I just trusted in my father,
Mm-hmm.
and I really think because I trusted in that and I believe it, I feel I really live it. I think it all comes back to that's why I'm living this charmed life.
Mm-hmm.
I really think, Susan, I look at life in a positive way. I just always am looking for the good that's around me. And I'm well aware there's a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of bad stuff that's happening in the world. But boy, if we can change our focus and focus on the good that is around us, we'll see more good in us, we'll do more good, and we will influence our sphere around us. And if we can all do that, things will get better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I said in the beginning of the book, and again at the end of the book, is what would happen in our life if we were the best version of ourselves every single day? And
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, if we could consciously be the best version of ourselves every day, life will be better. It might not change immediately, but it will definitely change and it will get better.
I like that. I love that. One of the ways that I kind of think about what you just said about if we could just focus, because there's so much noise, there's so many energies on the planet. And I think about, this vibrational scale of consciousness. And from the very lowest energy, I believe that was recorded, um, was like shame. I think it's like on a logarithmic scale, it's down at 20, where if we look at the highest scale in the map of consciousness, it's like 1,000 plus, and that's what we would call enlightenment. But as human beings, we have the capacity to feel all of it, and we at some point in life we will feel all of it. So every single day, as we go on this, I would say, awakened journey, we're going to be challenged or tested, with these lower vibrations. And I believe that they are a form of growth. Like, some will say all in life is a test. But I think what I come away with is that if we can become an observer of what's happening around us. And it's almost like not letting it in. Like it's not ignoring it. It's not pretending it doesn't exist. It doesn't pretending, that there's not suffering on the planet. I would say for the whole of humanity, I feel like there's a core of suffering that we endure. It's not not acknowledging that, but how can we become an observer of it? And um, I, I think it's about perspective, but it's also about, I think, processing it, because many of us are victimized, or we assume the victim role with what's going on. So we say, oh, but it's a financial downturn, oh, but inflation, that's causing me grief, oh, the wars. And people literally embody that. It's like embodying a situation and almost making it their own. And so,
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. I would tend to agree with that, and I do think it is all about perception and how do we look at life. How do we look at what's happening around us? One of the things that my father, he had just this simple phrase. If anything bad happened, he would just kind of look at it and say, "Well, it is what it is," and then he would
mhm,
he would carry on and he would look for the good. And I would say that's not always an easy thing to do. And I know that a lot of people have had bad things happen to them. Um, but when we keep looking back on that bad memory or that bad thing, it creates a block that can loop in our head. And we need to find a way to forgive, to let go. And when you can let go of the emotion around that negative experience and be more present in the now, what can you do right now to be a better person, to be a better version of you? The more you can consciously do that, the more you are in the present moment, and those past blocks will not exist to the same effect.
Mhm. You know, I think there are, I would say, some things that are easier to let go of than others. And you may or may not know this, but a lot of the work, the social impact work that I do, and my conscious work is breaking cycles of generational poverty. And you hit on the idea that these things can have a long thread and they can go back generations and generations and generations. And I would say it like this: sometimes when you're born into a circumstance, I like to use the poverty situation because many people can relate to it. Um, you don't know what it is to be outside of it. So it's all around you. I know you talk in your book of some lessons from your dad about the five people that you spend your time with, that's a reflection of you. Like think about who those individuals are. And very early in our life, it's our family and it's our friends. It's, our closest relatives. And just think everyone is living in a state of lack. And so when you come through like a milieu like that, or like a circumstance like that, you don't know what it is to be without it. Like it's like asking a fish, what is it to be out of water? It doesn't have another perspective. And so we have to um I feel like some of these circumstances are so hard to for many people to break is because of that. Like there's a feeling that you've never known what it is to be without it. And like you said, all the emotions that are tied with it. If you ask the people that you know, that you grew up with, that your family or your confidants even, they have the same perspective, that old perspective. And
Hmm.
so if you even suggest something new, you get that side look, like you're woo woo and gone crazy. And I think that even compounds it. The poverty story is just one of many kind of larger overreaching concepts, or I would say constructs, that people are born into, that they don't know how to be without it or what it is to be out of it. And so I like it when we come back to ourselves, like recognizing that change begins and ends with you. It's kind of like the forgiveness thing. Like this
Hmm.
is all about you. And you may not be able to change your circumstance, but the only thing that we really have the power, I believe, to change is ourselves. And so when we begin that inner journey, I call this a journey of introspection or inner work, or begin, I know you talk about in your book doing the work, and I believe we're talking about the same thing. When we begin introspecting, we can transform those energies within us. And when I say energies, they come in the form of our thoughts, our ideas, the language we speak that carries a vibration. As you know, it's a wave, it's a force. Our beliefs, the transforming, like we talk about being unstuck, but then how does one actually be unstuck when they're in this huge overarching construct, that they don't know what it is to be out of it? And then even inside of those big constructs, it's the idea that there's patterns and cycles, like generational patterns and cycles that repeat themselves. As far as you can look back on your life, you see the pattern repeating. As far as you look back on your family, your generational, you see the pattern repeating. And it's like the hamster wheel. It's the idea. It's like I'm on the hamster wheel. How do I get off of it? And I think that is, to me, where this work is very valuable, coming back to the self, because changing you, I then believe, transforms the circumstance. It's not the other way around, where we look outside of ourselves to change everything in our environment or our society, if you will, but we change us first. And then we begin to see the power of the universe come forth, where it begins to transform our external reality.
Well, I would tend to really agree with that. I know that, you talk about poverty and generational poverty, and you're right. If you were to talk to somebody that was in that was their outside circumstance, that's all they've experienced, and you try to talk to them about another way of living, their first response is probably, "What, you just don't understand. You don't know what it's
Mhm,
like."
mhm, mhm,
And that's true. The key to break out of that is really, as you say, it's within us. It is up
mhm,
to us. It's as simple as a decision. The problem is most people aren't aware that all they need to do is make a decision and then work from the inside out and start to change their circumstance.
mhm,
It's easy to look at what's going on around us and think, this is my lot in life. But
mhm,
there are many instances throughout history where people have busted out of that paradigm.
mhm,
And that's really what my father taught. He taught people how to change their paradigm, how to change the course of their life. Um, I wrote something really in the very beginning of the book. And I said, if all your past experiences make you who you are today, then who would you be if you forgot your past and started in a new place?
mhm,
What if the only thing you knew was that you could be, do, or have anything you truly desired? What would you want to be, do, or have? And that's, I think, what people really need to think about. And then they need to make a decision that, hey, this is how I want my life to be. I want it to be better. I want it to be more focused on wherever they would like to go. And then they need to get on with the work. And that work, it can be, simple things in the beginning. It can be simply writing out an affirmation every day of how you would like your life. And at first, you maybe feel like a phony, and you'll think, well,
mhm,
this just is not my life. But if you keep writing it out, I can promise you that in a month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll start to believe what you're writing, and you will start to, I think, see different circumstances around you and different situations that you might be able to take advantage of, that's going to get you out of wherever you're at, whatever you're looking to change. And that's really where it all starts. And as you say, it starts from the inside out. If we're looking for the outside circumstance to improve our life, we're going to just be, we can be looking forever.
mhm,
But if we
mhm,
make that decision inside, in our mind, where we want to be, and then get on with the work, what can I do today? What's one thing I can do, even if it's a little 10-minute thing, that's going to help me get to that better life? And you start focusing on that every single day. Boy, Susan, I mean, 6 months from now, you can have a different life. You will have a different circle of influence around you. It all starts with a choice.
mhm. I love that you said that it all starts with a choice. And I think many of us make disempowered choices because we don't believe a new reality is possible, or we feel victimized by our circumstance, or believe that we're not in control or we have no control over things. And so I think when we begin this work, we have to look at that core belief. And uncovering that can be is part of the work, right? That it's often not on the surface. It's not like, oh yeah, of course. Sometimes it's just like the circumstance. You've held the belief for so very long, you don't know what it is to not believe it. That's what you've never heard anything different. And so when I confront a belief that I believe, when I confront a belief that perhaps is a core belief, okay, like something that is unconscious, where I don't even know it's a belief, I just think this is how things are. And I don't call it a belief. It's part of my experiential knowing. of how things work, or what things are like, or so on and so forth. Expectations of self and things like that, or societal expectations. We don't recognize that there's a belief under it, that there's a belief underlying it. And I think one of the exercises that I like to share when we're discovering what our beliefs are, or getting to the root of our core beliefs, is to ask if it is true. And so, like, if I'm a woman, and in the embodiment that I have, and I think, well, I'm at a disadvantage because society calls me disadvantaged, relates to me as a minority, tells me over and over, all the research says that I'm compensated less. Even the word minority means less. And so then I embody a core belief that I am less, or I'm less in the eyes of this greater constituency of Americans, let's just say. Then I have to ask myself if it is true. And I think most people that come into embodiments like mine don't feel like they're less. We're like, wait a second, I'm not less intelligent, ambitious, capable, so on and so forth. And so you can begin, I believe it can start like this, Brian. Think about a child, and then we have this harmless consensus, that we're going to tell our children a falsehood. And we say, Santa Claus is real. Okay. And everybody's in on it, right? All the retailers, the government, everybody's in on it. That there's a North Pole and the whole story that goes with it. And it's told over and over again, generation after generation after generation. And we think it's harmless. But what I like to illustrate about the belief in Santa Claus is that when a child begins to question it, that belief is transformed. And so I think we can adopt the belief in Santa Claus to any belief that we have in our lives by asking questions, like questioning it and asking if it's true. And when we do that iterative process of questioning, then we have the power, I believe, to transform the belief. And it may hurt, you know. I remember my son, he wanted to ask me. He's like, "Mommy, tell me the truth. Is there really a Santa Claus?" But he didn't really want to hear the truth. And when I said, "No, buddy, it's Mommy and Dad," he goes, "No, why would you say that, Mommy? No." He didn't want to hear it. But he knew in his core that it was his parents that were putting the gifts under the tree and taking bites out of the cookies and drinking the milk. And he'd even leave carrots for the reindeers, and we'd have to take bites out of that too. And it's like every child, that comes up in this paradigm that we create in this country with this belief, this early, what we think is a harmless belief. And that to me is a model of how we can transform any belief.
Boy, I have to say, that is probably one of the best analogies I have ever heard. And it's
Thank you.
so simple and certainly timely this time of year, isn't it? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I completely agree with you. I think uh, everybody has paradigms that are set into their being by their parents, by generations that can go way
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, by society as well. And I agree with you. I think we know in our heart if that paradigm is serving us or not serving us. And
Mm-hmm.
if it is not serving us, it is time to step up and challenge that and to look for the solution within that will change that for the better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it's easy to let the mass consciousness or these things that are created around it just let it be, and oh well, that's just the way it is. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an easy way to not take ownership of where
Mm-hmm.
we're at. I
Yeah.
think, boy, if we can take ownership and, hey, you know what? This isn't serving me. What is
Mm.
going to serve me? And what do I have to do to break that, whatever paradigm is? And, my father, uh, to kind of go back on this a little bit, my father came from a family that nobody was ever a huge success. They all just got by. He came from a very small town in northern Ontario.
Mm-hmm.
And dad was really the one that changed the paradigm of for himself and for his family. And because he challenged the way of living in poverty, he grew up in poverty. He didn't think that had to be our lot in life.
Mm-hmm.
Because he challenged it, he was able to show the way for his sister, his brother, and the rest of his family to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
That it
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to be an accepted part of life. And like you say, I think, boy, if we can decide if this is not serving us, how do we change it? And then
Mm-hmm.
just step into that. What can I do to challenge that situation today? And what am I going to do to change my perspective of this and to change my life for the better?
Mm. I love that you brought up ownership and, sharing your father's and family's journey about generational poverty, because that's a story that many of us have. And I call it our money story. But you know what I think it is, Brian? Well, let me say one of the things that I think it is when people hear what we're saying, but feel like perhaps they've tried and they give up or don't believe it or think it's possible, um, is this idea that if we are empowered, if we take agency or sovereignty of our being, and we are empowered, and we recognize that our choices create our lives, that we are the creator of our own lives. Can be an existentialist kind of thought from our forefathers like Einstein or even Nietzsche in philosophy, or it can be kind of a religious existentialism. But the idea is that once we take ownership of that, then we also, I believe, Brian, must take responsibility for what we are creating. And I think many people don't want to take responsibility for what they create because they will say, well, that's how my family was, or look at the parents I had, or look at the education system, look at the community I grew up in, look at my job. They let me off, don't pay me enough, or they laid me off, or it's always something outside of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's much easier to blame that, to outside of yourself than to take ownership of the choices you made. I love this idea about choice and like you said about making a decision, because those that's very powerful. It's like you can probably put like a mark on your life timeline of very important decisions you made and how the trajectory of your life may have changed. But I think on the day-to-day choices, we don't recognize how powerful they are. And one of the exercises I like to do with my clients, and I host a show called the Money Consciousness Show for people that have the poverty story in their history, is to say, look around you, look at your home, for example. And it's like, did you choose that couch? Did you choose the neighborhood that you're living in? Did you pick your house, your apartment? What about the dishes? What about what's in your cupboards? Did you go to the store and choose all of that stuff? And most people recognize that they, in fact, did. Nobody put a gun to their head and said, you must pick these foods. No, you don't get the tan couch, you get the brown couch. No, they chose it on their own. And so when we begin to recognize that we have made all the choices, even though some will say, well, I didn't have a choice, right? This was the circumstance. This is how much money I had. This was the job I had. This is the education. I didn't have a choice. And I said, even if the choice that is before us isn't the most empowered, enlightened, or even the choice that we are of our highest desire, it's a choice nonetheless.
Hmm.
And so we choose it, even if it's not the best. Like, it's kind of like the idea with like our elections. People say, well, I'm just choosing the lesser of evils. Like, there are no good choices, but you vote for something. So that's a choice. That's a decision you've made. And sometimes people choose to do nothing at all and to almost, I would call it, settle for the default condition, like whatever happens, because the choices before them, they feel are so disempowering. But I think, what we can come to observe or understand is that even in those difficult choices where you feel like there's not a great choice, but I've got to make a choice, even if my choice is no choice at all, but that's a choice I'm making, that there's growth in it. Like, that is part of our growth story, our spiritual growth story. And so
Hmm.
when you make, when you feel like you've chosen a disempowered choice, let's say I get into a bad loan situation. I take a payday loan. I feel like I don't have a choice. The computer broke down, or I need to pay my electric bill, and I got to choose something that is excruciating. And so I make this choice, but I think in that choosing is your learning, is your growth. If you can allow it, if you can, like you said about perception, is like one of the questions that I encourage is to ask, so what is this situation showing me? What am I to learn from this? I'm going to share, if you'll allow me, I want to share a situation that I couldn't understand how it could help. Like, I like literally couldn't get it. And it took me a long time. And it's why I do a lot of work surrounding, breaking cycles of generational poverty, is uh, as debt, being in debt. I couldn't understand it. It's like, no, this something would always happen. Lose a job, layoff, health issues, something would happen. And then it would disrupt, my finances. And then I would end up charging all this stuff on credit cards and then getting in trouble with credit card debt where I couldn't service the debt because then, I was laid off. And I would see this pattern recurring. I was like, God darn it. I don't, how could this be serving me? I couldn't, I mean, for the life of me, when I was on this spiritual journey in the very beginning, I would go into different programs and have different mentors. And I would say, so what is this? I don't understand how this is serving me. And this is what I would always get back. When there's a money situation, it's never about the actual money. And I would say, well, what's it about? And then I would be crickets. No one could seem to tell me. And Brian, I would lose my shit. Like, I'd go crazy. I'd be like, what? I'd spend this money on this program, and I asked one question, like, and I can never get the answer to it. And so I began to introspect on these core beliefs. And so this is what I realized is when I would ask, how is this serving me? I recognized that I used to tell myself this tongue-in-cheek kind of joke. I would say something to the effect that it's kind of I owe, so it's off to work I go. Like that whole rhyme where the debt or the obligation was what was motivating me to be productive, to get up in the morning, to live the next day. And so it was a core belief that I had to have like this pending obligation to actually motivate me to do anything. And so this goes back to that core principle. I'd say, well, is it true? Is it really the debt that is motivating me? Is that the root of my motivation, what gets me up in the morning? And I was like, no, it's not the debt. I'm productive regardless. I love what I do. And then, I think we can go one step further and say, well, what would it be like? And this is what, you talk about in your book about your dad, about envisioning, the life that feeling into what what you want, not focusing on what you don't want. And I would say, no, I mean, if I'm out of debt, it's not that I won't be motivated or I won't wake up I used to say, oh, the day that I'm out of debt or have no debt, it's just like the universe. That'll be the day I die. I mean, I would say things like that. And part of me, even if it wasn't the whole part of me believed it. And so that was a belief that was keeping me mired in debt. And so I think we have thorny entanglements that we don't recognize as beliefs, but they are there nonetheless. And they could be what is keeping us stuck or in patterns and cycles that we do not want, even if we feel like it's like happening to you. It's like, I didn't ask to be laid off. I didn't ask this, but it still, here it is. I didn't ask for this illness. And here it is. And it's an opportunity, I believe. I believe the universe gives us experiences or situations that get our attention. And so if your issue is with your relationships, you're going to have a relationship existential crisis. If it's with your self-worth, you're going to have some financial stuff. If it's with your beliefs with whatever, your abilities, you're going to have maybe intellectual things or job things that keep recurring and holding you back, or believe are holding you back. And there are attempts I believe it's the universe's very clever attempt to push your buttons, like to show you what it is that must be transformed within you. So it's like this very elaborate kind of play, like this very elaborate game of life. And all the things that don't feel good, as you said, aren't serving us, are intentional to remind you that there's something within you that is in need of transformation or need of, let's say, release. And if we can see it as that, then we are empowered to change it.
And I think you just hit it right on the head. If we can see it, it all starts with awareness. We need to see it to change it. Otherwise, we're just in that victim mentality. It's that age old saying. What are you giving energy to? Whatever you're giving energy to is you're going to bring more of back into your life. And
Mm-hmm.
you speak of debt. If all you're focused on is debt, you're just going to keep bringing more debt into your life. A lot of people, when they first saw that movie, The Secret, they would
Mm-hmm.
start thinking, well, then all I got to do is start thinking of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And what people would do was they would dream of wealth, but they were still thinking about debt. And so they
Mm-hmm.
just kept bringing more debt into their life. And it's not to say that we don't have debt or we don't have these things in our life, but we don't need to make that our entire focus. And the more we can start looking at what can we do to get out of this? What can we do to eliminate it? What choices can I make today that will help me just a little way out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's looking for that quick fix, that magic pill that's going to change it all. Well, the quick fix is that little bit every day. And if we just do what we can today, that little bit more, that little bit better, things will change. It might take a few months, it might take a couple of years, but those few months and couple of years are going to go by anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
why
Mm-hmm.
not start focusing on what we do want and what can I do today to make that change? And it will make all the difference in our world. You talk, Susan, about our outside circumstances and how we can become victims to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll share a quick little story. It's a little off topic, but I think it really gets into the meat of what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
My father was always of the opinion that we should never let our outside circumstance dictate how we are and how we act in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And You'll know in the book, the first chapter, it was probably the hardest chapter I had to write. It was about the last few days of my father's life,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in the intensive care unit of the hospital. He was not doing well. He was in a lot of pain, had several infections. He was just not in good shape. And I could hear other people. I was in the room with him, and I could hear other people in the hospital, other patients that were yelling at the nurses and doctors because they were in pain, and they were just treating everybody around them poorly,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of the agony that they were in.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the interesting thing: my father lived this to his core. Here he was in pain, in agony, not doing well. We had a nurse in the room. He had all kinds of IVs already coming out of him. She had to get another IV in him. And she was poking and prodding and creating a lot more discomfort for him. And she was apologizing. She said, "I'm so sorry." She just could not find a vein. And here's what my father did: he put his hand on that nurse's hand. And he says, "Don't worry, dear. You're doing a tremendous job. I appreciate everything you've done for me. You just do whatever you need to do. It's all fine." And in that instant, I could see and feel the nurse's energy relax.
Mm-hmm.
And she instantly found a vein and it was taken care of. But here's the lesson I got out of it: Dad did not let his outside circumstance dictate how he was going to be or how he was going to treat those that were in his presence. And boy, if we can live from that point of view, we will change. We will change our outside circumstance. It may be slow, it may not be as quick as you'd like, but boy, if
Mm-hmm.
we can live from that perspective, life will get better.
Mm. I love that. Yes, and I loved hearing that. It's a very tender story and really speaks to your father's character. And one of the things that you alluded to before the story and during the story, to me, it boils down to alignment, alignment of your thoughts with the alignment of what you speak, alignment with what you feel, and alignment with what you do. And when there's a discordant, or there's, let's say you think one thing but say something different, or you say one thing but you feel something very different, that is where the chaos to me in the soul occurs.
Mhm.
Because just think about it this way: when we are in alignment, let's say we have a higher frequency thought, we espouse higher frequency words, we feel well. We're our, I would say, our resting frequency or our set point, our default condition is at a higher vibration. It may be one of awareness, of gratitude, of love, of patience, of a higher realm of feeling. That signal is amplified, that higher frequencies that is additive. So all of those frequencies create a higher frequency amplitude. And I believe that frequency, I believe the frequency of our feelings is the language of the universe. And so just think that high amplitude frequency is what is set out into that substrate of creation and what is returned to us in kind. Now, if I have high vibrations, it's additive. What if I have, let's say, um, a low vibrational thought, like I'm thinking something that isn't good, but I'm just going to say the words that I think people want to hear. But in my mind, I'm really thinking badly, or even like I want to bring harm to someone, but I say something different. You have a high and a lower vibration that begin to uh, cancel out the signal. So you have two opposite, if you will, waveforms, and when they come together, they cancel out the signal. And so you don't really get anywhere in your, let's say, manifestation process or your attraction process. And I think that creates a lot of confusion and frustration for people because they're like, well, I said I want this, but in their mind they're thinking they're not deserving, or they're not good enough, or who are they to have what they want. And so the same thing, I think, on those lower frequency thoughts. Let's say I'm thinking not good. I say really crass, awful things. I feel lower energies, hate, jealousy, anger, fear. Those are all lower vibrations that are going to add up to create a huge amplitude of those lower vibrational frequencies. And what happens? That high amplitude signal is sent out to the universe and returns to you all the stuff that you do not want. And so I think if we can really recognize the importance of alignment of our thoughts, the language we speak, how we feel, and what we do, that's all energy emanating from us. And the idea is that we can't always be in a spirit of love and enlightenment. Life is going to happen. You're going to feel it. But the idea is that we can return back to this place of observation, of awareness, of love, of perhaps maybe it's just acceptance. Like you said, it just is. It is what it is. It's not good or bad, it just is. That the only meaning anything has is the meaning that we assign to it. So it just is. Even if we can come to that, we may not love it. It may not be something even appropriate to love about it. But the idea is that this is it, that it is. This exists. And I don't fall into those lower energies for any long period of time or stay there kind of stewing, in the circular motion and what we call getting stuck there.
I agree wholeheartedly with you. And I think the key is we all go to those places. Even I go to the negative place once in a while. The key is to recognize it, as you say, with awareness, and then make that change. Once you're aware of it, you can make the change. You don't have to be that person.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I often think you can go to a party and you have two people you can talk to in the room. There's this one person that's always negative, always talking about the crap that's going on. And there's the other person that's just always smiling. They're happy. And they're always telling you what they like about you and 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 just all the good that's going on in the world. Who do you want to be around?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we have a choice to be one or the other of those people. And we have a choice in how we're going to live this life, no matter what is going on around us. And with that choice, by making that decision, that brings us true freedom. And with that freedom, we will start to attract into our life the things that we're really looking for. But we won't attract it until we make that decision, that choice, and start to look for the good that's around.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and hey, I'm not living a Pollyanna world. I realize there's crap going on, and I realize people are in bad situations.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is to not wallow in it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let all your attention just strictly see the bad. Make a decision to start looking for the good. And more importantly, make a decision as to what can I do right now that's going to get me one step out of this. It might not get you out right away, but boy, oh boy, if you keep doing that one little thing that'll keep getting you out of it, before long, you won't even know what happened. You'll be looking back and thinking, gosh, my life has really changed. And
Right.
and it's all because of the freedom of making a decision to be better and to do better with our life.
Mm. I love that. I think the idea is if we can come to it, is to expect miracles. I believe that they're happening all the time. We just don't recognize them. And one of our, I would say, colleagues in this personal development space, Marianne Williamson, has said, I'll paraphrase this, that there's no order of difficulty in creation. That you can create, these awful scenarios just as easily. I think you said it before as the positive changes. If you think of one, if you can think of one scenario, then think of the equal opposite or the better scenario. That's just as easy as far as the order of creation in the universe. And so I think that if we can come to understand that, and I think really importantly how much each of us matters. I think sometimes we feel that we are small and it's just
Hmm.
me or little old me, or who am I, or how could I be the one, whatever it is that you're after, or your goals or desires are. But the fact is that everybody matters. We're all a thread in this elaborate, enormous fabric of life, and your thread matters. Your thoughts, they matter. Your language matters. How you feel matters. That energy you emanate from your heart, from your soul, it matters. The things you do, they matter. And to me, it's just like this whole culmination that you matter, no matter how small you think you are or insignificant. You are a part of the universal thread that creates this fabric of life. And so I think
Well,
when we can be empowered in that, it has the power to change our perspective.
it really does. You know, one of the things that my father used to teach in some of the seminars, he taught about our mental faculties, and one of the ones that resonated with me the most was the use of your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the ability to imagine a better life, to be a better person, to live a more fulfilling way of being. And yes, we can zero in and focus on what difference do I make in this world, or make ourselves feel smaller. The truth is, we all make a difference in this world. We
Mm-hmm.
we all go out in this world and we interact with people. It could be somebody as simple as the grocery clerk at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
How we interact with people, we can make or break somebody's day just in a simple
Mm-hmm.
interaction. We all have that power. And let's start using our imagination and be that better version and do better around us. And the more we do, the more fulfilling our life, quite frankly, will get, and the more good that we can do in the world.
Oh,
uh,
I
you know
love that.
One of the things that Dad and I often did, and I miss dearly, we were both early morning people, and it wouldn't be uncommon for the two of us to be on the phone at 5 a.m. And we did something that I just loved. I coined a phrase around it. We would talk good about people behind their
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And we did this often. We'd pick somebody, we would just start talking good about them. And that person wouldn't have a clue that we're talking good about them. But I will tell you, the feeling that I felt in my heart and the way it expanded, I don't know, the energy that I had within me was incredible. How often people get caught up in gossip and talking bad
Mm-hmm.
about people. And we
Mm-hmm.
don't give thought to, why don't we start speaking good about people behind their back and
Mm-hmm.
watch what that does for you. And, if you get into a conversation with somebody and it is about gossip, recognize that and then try to switch it and
Mm-hmm.
start talking good about whoever you were talking about and see what happens to that conversation. It's incredible the change that we can create. It's like that whole pebble in the pond thing. You throw a pebble in the pond, and that ripple will go on forever.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a difference.
I I I wholeheartedly agree. I love that. We've come to the hour, Brian, but there was one thing that came up in your book that I wanted to ask you about, and maybe you can offer some tips to our listeners. You talked about you and your dad having this exercise of carrying a goal card and goal setting. And you talk about that's something that you impart upon your audiences when you're teaching from the stage. Could you leave us with a couple of tips on, wait, what is the goal card? Like, is it a physical, like, note card, or like, what is that you carry around in your pocket every day? And like, how do we go about it? Is it something that maybe changes every day, or we keep it until that goal is reached, or kind of what is the concept behind that?
Well, this is, in my opinion, one of the best things that he ever taught. We won't do anything different in this world or in our life unless we have a reason to, unless we have a want that's big enough to cause us to change, to cause us to step out and maybe do something that's uncomfortable, something we don't really want to do, but that will help us get to where we want to go. So a goal card is really, it's just It's a little card. It's like an index card, maybe a little bit smaller, where you write out your goal, um, and you carry it with you so that it's
Mm.
in your pocket or it's in your purse. And every time you reach in your pocket or your purse, you fill this card, you'll think about your goal. And really, it's just a trigger. It's a trigger to get you focused on what you're working towards.
Mhm.
And dad was always big on what he would call a C type goal. He said there's three different types of goals. There's A type goals, B type goals, and C type goals. And an A type goal is just setting a goal for something that you already know how to do. Maybe a car or maybe something you've already done. He
Mhm.
said there's no inspiration in that. And he says most people, quite frankly, either don't set a goal or set an A type goal that is just something they already know how to do.
Mhm.
So there's no inspiration in that. Because of that, it won't cause you to do anything differently. He said then there's B type goals, and that's something that you have a goal that you set and you think, okay, if I do this and I do that, and maybe if I step out and do this, I'll get there. And he said that's a little bit better because it will cause you to do some things differently. But again, you know that if you set up things in a certain way, you will get there. He
Mhm.
said, again, there's no big inspiration in that. He said a C type goal is where you pick something that you don't have a clue how you're going to get there. And you go back to the poverty talk. It could be, being a millionaire, being a
Mhm.
successful business owner. It could be something you don't have a clue how you're going to get there. But if it inspires you, if it resonates with you, whatever that may be, he said that is a worthy goal, a goal that you don't know how you're going to get there, but that you will step into it and learn how to get there along the way.
Mm.
And like I have a big goal with this book, Susan. I have a large sales goal I'd like to reach with it. As you know, there's not a lot of money in books, so this is not about a financial gain for me. For me, it's about getting the message out to the world
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
who my father was and how he helped change lives. Because I know that anybody that reads this book will come away, I would hope, with some valuable nuggets that will help them shift their life. And
Absolutely.
because I have this big goal, I now I don't know how to get there. I still don't, but I am stepping into things that I would have never normally done. I'm doing things I would never have done before. I'm doing things that, quite frankly, are uncomfortable. I don't always care to do them, but I'm willing to do them because I want to reach that goal. I want to get there. So I have a goal card. I have it written down. I've actually got it right in front of me right now. And I keep it in my pocket so that when I touch it, I think about it. It's
Mm.
You need triggers to keep you on the path of where you want to go. Otherwise, we fall back into the same old routine of that day to day living, and there's no inspiration in that. If we can get zeroed in on something that is really worthy of stepping out and betting on ourselves, being a different version of ourselves, and doing more in this world, boy, your life is going to change forever. And that's really it in a nutshell. One of the things I loved, even growing up, I loved his Goal Achiever seminars. And I loved them because it got me focused on something bigger than I thought I could do. And one of the ways he said to come up with that dream, that big goal, is just picture yourself with a magic wand. If you could have anything, what would that be? And that's what you want to start thinking about. What would
Mhm.
that be? When our paradigms start attacking, who are you to think you could do that? Or God, what would the neighbors think if I did that? Or what would my parents or my kids think, or my wife or my husband?
Mhm.
Um, you know, that's the nonsense chatter that comes in. But think, what would you really like if you could do that? And if you can come up with something that's going to cause you to step out and bet on yourself and do something different, it might be your own business. I mean, whatever that is, we're all different. That's the great thing about this world. We're all different, and different things motivate us.
Mhm.
But if you can find what that is, and then you just start stepping out and betting on yourself, you'll find the way and you will get there. And your life will be better because of it. That was really it. The other one key important thing, Susan, that he always said was to only share your goal with people that you know are going to support you.
Mm.
A lot of value in that. If you share your goal with anybody, you'll have some people that look at you like you're nuts,
Mhm.
and and will knock you down, and that can throw you off. You only share it with people that you know will support you. And that's a valuable thing. I mean, if we go back in history, look at Henry Ford, Thomas Edison. Uh, can you imagine back in that day, Thomas Edison saying, "I'm going to build this light bulb," or Henry Ford, "I'm going to a V8 motor." I mean,
Hmm.
have
Hmm.
cars all over. You'd look at them like they were crazy.
Right.
So don't share your big goal with anybody that will not support you. That's it.
Yeah. And I love I know that in your book you talked about an experience your father had sharing his dream or goal with someone that didn't support him and learning that lesson. And I think your father's experience happens to all of us. We don't know ahead of time that when we share our big dream with our friends, our family, potential whatever, supporters, donors, investors, partners, that they'll reject it. We don't always know that in advance. And so we can share things thinking that this, may be the one person that kind of like, who your father was for Mary Morrissey,
Mhm.
you know, that does step up and say, I believe in you. I'm going to support you. But we don't know in advance. I feel that. I totally feel that. That story about your father, I really, that resonated with me very deeply. And I've had that experience myself. And, it's just very difficult at times to know the difference, and how people will respond to you.
It is, and quite frankly, sometimes the people that are closest to us can be the ones that can hurt us or throw us off track the easiest. Because if they don't believe in you, they're the ones that can throw you off, and then all of a sudden you'll think, "Oh well, I don't really want that anyway," and then walk away. The key is if it's a want that you really want, even if you have somebody really close to you tell you you're crazy, all you need to do is just think, okay, do I want this?
Mhm.
And if you want this, keep going for it and put that out of your head what that other person said. And now I wouldn't talk to them about it anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and just focus on what can you do to start getting closer to that goal. And a worthy goal, you're not going to achieve it. I wouldn't say never, but likely you're not going to achieve it quickly. It's going to take you a little bit of time. And the key is all about our mindset. What vision are you going to hold? And I've hit many roadblocks along my way to my goal. I've hit outside circumstances that show me, Brian, you're crazy. How are you ever going to do that?
Mhm.
But I don't give that energy. I allow myself through imagination to have this deep inner knowing that I am going to get there and the way is going to show itself. You know, I may be talking about this a little too much, but to drag this out just one little bit further, Susan, if I can,
Mhm.
my father was so committed to teaching what he taught. He was really a founder in the personal development world, and
Mhm.
he taught it for years. And it was never easy. He hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. Do you know the movie The Secret, when that came out, that altered everything for him? It opened him up to a new audience. That's when he got on Larry King Live and Ellen DeGeneres and Nightline and all these different shows that really opened up a whole new audience to him. Do you know he was 72 years old when that happened?
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
had the vision that he was going to be all around the world, helping people around the world live a better life. And he held that vision even when his outside circumstance would not show it.
Mhm.
Because he held that vision and he kept working towards it, he got there. And it was an unlikely thing that got him there. That's the great part of this. If you keep working towards your goal, and you have that belief that you know you're going to get it, there will be something that will happen for you that will
Mhm.
change everything. And it will likely be from an area that you would have never expected it to be from.
Exactly. I always say the universe bends over backwards when
It
you
sure
can
does.
align and I always, I like to remind, my clients and listeners that you can think of the best case scenario, but leave one more option available, and that's something even better.
Hmm.
Allow something even better. Maybe you cannot even conceive. the confluence of events that'll lead up to you realizing your greatest, biggest dream, or in your case, the biggest goal that you have. But allow what you can think of, and then one more space for something even better. Well, Brian, I've enjoyed this conversation so much. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing all of your wisdom. Will you share with us how our audience can reach you if they want to purchase your book or learn more about your speaking, or how they can find you on social?
Sure. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you, Susan. I really appreciate you having me on. This has been honestly, just a great conversation. For anybody that's looking for more information, you can just go to brianproctor.com. If you go to brianproctor.com, you'll see that where you can order the book in whatever country you're in. I've thrown in some bonuses to go along with it. There's a downloadable workbook that you can use in conjunction with the book. And really, the whole purpose of it all is to help you apply the stories and the material that I've written in the book. This book, Susan, is really, I often laughed, it's really not about me. It is about my father. And it is
Mm-hmm.
about the lessons. I share all the stories of what he taught me, his son. And so you're going to get the very best in there because he wanted the best for me. And I want the best for you. And that's why I've written this book. I've included everything. There's nothing that I have left out. So it will really, if you're looking to live a better life, I feel that this book can show you how to do that in a simple way. I've written it in a very conversational tone,
Mm.
so that it's easy to read and easy to apply the lessons. So yes, just go to brianproctor.com. You'll get everything you need right there.
Thank you so much, Brian. This has been a great pleasure.
Thank you, Susan.
I want to thank you for taking this inner journey with us today. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious. If you loved this episode and if today's message resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review the Be Conscious podcast. This helps listeners just like you find intriguing and transformative content. I also want to know what inspired you and what conscious topics you'd like to hear more about. And if you want, you can share those thoughts and questions with me at info@susannicholas.org.
Thanks for listening to the Be Conscious podcast with author, TEDx international speaker, and conscious coach, Dr. Susan Nicholas. Be sure to connect with her to stay up to date with her latest news and works. Learn more about her conscious speaking platform at susannicholas.org/speaking. Stay tuned for the next thought-provoking episode. And whether you are coming or going, looking inside or out, remember to be conscious.